Get the upper hand on your competition with SCUF controllers. Use code OGXRAYZ to get 5% off your entire order. Yo guys, what's up? It's XRAYZ. Welcome back to another video. Now today I actually wanted to talk about something very interesting, and this is from a Call of Duty player's perspective, so if you want to dismiss my opinion, you can if you're a hardcore Battlefield fan. I personally am more of a casual Battlefield fan. I still very much enjoy the game. I don't play it near as much as I do other games. In fact, even now I don't play as much Call of Duty as I did in the past. I enjoy playing more variety of games at this point in my life, or at this point in my video game quote-unquote career. But this has been a topic, or I should say a hot topic, for the past few weeks and months, and it has been the systematic implosion, I guess you could say, of Battlefield 5, of specifically EA. Literally, this is a war of attrition, and EA is just tossing soldiers at it, and Battlefield 5 seems to be the casualty of it. And let me start off by saying, first of all, Battlefield 5 is not failing, is not doing much worse because there are women in the game. That is just a complete misconception, I think, and something that was blown up by the media. Gamers are not against women in video game. If it was, then there would be people up in arms because there's women in Call of Duty, because there's women in games like Nintendo games or other genres. It's not just people hate women in video games. I find it very silly when I hear that. Now, the reason I'm making this video is because recently it was reported that Battlefield 5's pre-order numbers are lagging behind Call of Duty's by a whopping 85%, which is insane. I never thought it would be that far behind. Obviously, every year we have a debate of who's gonna win, Call of Duty or Battlefield. It's always been this back and forth between the two juggernauts. But at the end of the day, regardless of if you hate or love either Battlefield or Call of Duty, I think when people argue about who's going to win, I think they're talking about maybe not so much the critic reviews, but which one is more successful in terms of monetary gain. And for a long time, Call of Duty has been the franchise that, while admittedly stagnant and is starting to lower in sales and the popularity is starting to lag more than it did in the past, it's still a big juggernaut of a company. Every game still does relatively successful. And I think that, I'm not looking at hard statistics here, but I think for the past number of years, despite Battlefield getting better critical scores and better even customer reviews, Call of Duty has still sold better than Battlefield. Again, whichever is your cup of tea. I'm not saying one thing is better than the other. If you think your game is better than the other, that is your opinion. Awesome. Good for you. But it's never been this huge gap. It's not like, despite Call of Duty being that one company that everyone hates on and being that one game that only idiots play, quote unquote, it's always sold better than Battlefield, but it's never sold drastically better than Battlefield. So it's very shocking that we're getting this 85% lower pre-order numbers than Call of Duty. And despite all the controversy, despite there being a misrepresentation of World War II, despite there being executives saying that if you don't like the game, don't buy it. Despite all of this controversy, I never thought that it would affect the sales as much as it did, because again, like I was saying, DICE and the whole Battlefield franchise is a juggernaut, and I never really expected them to have a game that did bad. Well, maybe except for Hardline. I think Hardline was the one game where people just did not care. I enjoyed Hardline. I don't know why, but I enjoyed it, but a lot of people did not, so maybe that's the one misstep. I think that a lot of people were like, what? Come on. But I think it's a number of reasons, and I think it's all just culminating into one gigantic self-implosion of decisions. And this is, again, all of this ideas and perspectives are coming from someone who is not a hardcore Battlefield player. So maybe you feel like it's not my position to have an opinion on, and I'll give that to you. Maybe, my opinion maybe is invalid and doesn't matter because I don't play Battlefield as much as other people, but I still wanted to give a perspective of an outsider looking in. I'm not inner circle for EA. I don't know what's going on there with the fan base. I'm just someone who enjoys video games, looking from the outside in and analyzing all the arguments that I've seen so far. And I think it's just been misstep after misstep after misstep. So let's start off with some of the reasons I think that Battlefield 5 is not doing as good. And also I want to emphasize before I jump into why I think that the game is failing, this does not mean that Battlefield 5 is going to fail. It's not going to become Titanfall 2. There's multiple reasons why it's not doing that well, but pre-order numbers at the end of the day don't dictate how many sales the game is going to have. Just because the pre-order sales are way lower than they were in past years, this doesn't mean that Battlefield 5 is dead on arrival, okay? So I want to throw that out there. Just because pre-order sales are down, it doesn't mean that, you know, the sales of the actual game are going to be terrible. Who knows? Maybe a month or two after the game comes out, everyone will get past this controversy and the game will start selling like hotcakes. Who knows? Maybe by the time the game launches, we're all just, everything's swept under the rug and we're good. So I don't want to immediately start putting statements like, the game has failed, because if the game isn't even out yet, the sales numbers aren't even there yet, and who knows what'll happen a few months or a month after the game is out. So just wanted to throw that out there. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about some of these things that I think really hurt the success of Battlefield 1. From what I saw and from what I felt too, I think a lot of people were ready for a modern Battlefield. Don't get me wrong, Battlefield 1 was a very fun game. I very much enjoyed it. It was really cool seeing the World War I setting in this gigantic, chaotic battlefield style. It was amazing. Don't get me wrong, it was fun. Now, there were some issues there from what I saw from the community reacting. Maybe the DLC schedule was a little weird, but at the end of the day, people very much enjoyed Battlefield 1. But I think after Battlefield 1, especially if you're someone who is cross-genre, or if you're someone who plays multiple games, you got World War I setting with Battlefield, and you got a World War II setting with World War II for Call of Duty. I think it just burnt out a lot of people on this past era setting. So when Battlefield 5 was announced, I think a lot of people were bummed out to see that it was a World War II setting as opposed to a modern era setting. And personally, as someone who was a big fan of Battlefield 3, who was a big fan of Battlefield 4, and again, I said I enjoyed Battlefield 1. I did not enjoy it as much because personally I enjoy more modern style shooters. I was really hoping for a Battlefield 5 that was in a modern setting or something more modern. So I felt disappointed. I think a large portion of people also felt disappointed. And I've been seeing a lot of comments saying that Battlefield 5 is essentially Battlefield 1. It's the same, it looks the same. It might play differently, but I've been seeing the argument that it just looks the same. So right there, first misstep in my opinion is the game being a World War II setting. I'm not saying it's a terrible idea. I'm saying that I think there might have been some fatigue from World War I now to World War II. I think a lot of people were expecting a modern Battlefield and were excited for it, and they were kind of let down. Now again, I'm not saying that World War II was a terrible game and a terrible setting. I'm just saying that I think a lot of people were hyped up for a modern one and then had to come back down to reality. I think the second thing that was a misstep was the marketing for this game has been abysmal. It's been terrible. The reveal event was boring, was lots of talking, not enough showing. I feel like the marketing for this game was horrible, like horrible. I just feel like the marketing that was put out there had so much controversy. And like I was saying, people were not arguing that there were women in Battlefield or that there's women in their video games, because there are women in tons of video games across a ton of genres. No one has a problem with it. I think people had a problem with this hopefully being, and you expect Battlefield to be a realistic portrayal. Obviously, video games can only be as realistic to a certain extent. You can revive people with a syringe. You can't go 100% into it and be like, oh my god, this is supposed to be realistic. Because when you have video games, you have to be able to ignore some stuff like, oh my god, I respawn, you know? I think people were upset that because Battlefield is more of a realistic take, and, you know, Call of Duty is supposed to be the fake, jumping around, super high speed, and Battlefield is more of a slower paced, more realistic game. When they saw that there was a woman with a prosthetic arm who was in the British front line, I think a lot of people were like, what the hell is this? Not so much that it was a woman, but it was a woman that was misplaced or miscategorized in terms of where they had their position in the war. You know, the argument I've been seeing a lot is, well, why weren't they just like rebel fighters, like the French resistance? Why wouldn't they do that? Why would they completely... Well, first of all, I think the biggest problem was the amputee with the whole robot arm. And what was up with that? The Hook, Captain Hook. I think people were just upset at that. They were upset that this realistic game took this weird turn, and this was kind of expected. If you want Battlefield to be a free game that you can get free DLC content for, and they announced that there was no premium version of the game, you're not gonna have to pay for DLC, it's all free, you kind of have to expect at that point that they're gonna be pushing cosmetic stuff a lot. And so they're gonna get crazy, they're gonna get outlandish, they're gonna get out there to try to have people buy these cosmetics. And at the end of the day, you kind of have to have one or two. Do you want to have a Battlefield game that has paid DLC content but doesn't have all these crazy cosmetic hook arm people? Or would you rather have a free-to-play version for DLC, but then they have a ton of crazy cosmetic items that are completely out of place in a Battlefield game? And again, this could have been avoided more if it was a modern setting. Because it's a World War II setting, you really can't take as many liberties when it comes to the cosmetic items. You're gonna look foolish, you're gonna look weird. And, you know, a lot of people play Battlefield because it's more of a serious game, a lot more strategic. And if you got a dude running around with a hook arm shooting guns, it kind of takes you out of it if you are a hardcore Battlefield player. Now, if this was a modern, you know, game, or even distant future, maybe you could have these people who have these prosthetic arms and it's not as out of place. People would not be as upset at these cosmetic choices. But because it's Battlefield, because it's World War II, because there is a blueprint and you kind of have to follow that blueprint, a lot of people were upset. So we've got a setting that people were not expecting, a little bit let down by. We've got a multitude of cosmetic and just historical inaccuracies that people were not happy with. Move forward to terrible marketing. The reveal event was terrible. A lot of information was coming out from YouTubers themselves as opposed to the actual publishing company. Like, people were finding out information about Battlefield 5 from YouTuber exclusive information. Who thought that was a great idea? Like, awesome for the YouTubers, but at the same time, it's like, why wouldn't you have a press release or something in the reveal event that shows off all this stuff as opposed to having word of mouth information from YouTubers? Which, again, I'm not blaming them, I'm blaming the marketing. That was just terrible. Move forward from there and you've got EA executives telling their fan base that they are uneducated, that they hate women, and guess what? Women are here to stay, and if you don't like it, don't buy it. Literally, they're antagonizing the fan base to not buy the game. What do you expect? And again, like I was saying, no one has a problem with there being women in Battlefield. If this was a modern game or any, honestly, I feel like any game where it would not be like weird to have a woman in that scenario historically. And if they went modern, they could have done whatever the hell they wanted. They could have done World War III for all we care. And if you have women in there, no one's going to care. If this was a future Battlefield, modern Battlefield, having all these cosmetic options with the prosthetic arms or having women in the front lines, no one would care. The reason people were upset was because you expect Battlefield to be this realistic portrayal of whatever they're portraying, whether it's World War I or World War II. Imagine if they had the same thing in Battlefield 1, some prosthetic armed dude who was shooting a gun. I think people would have as big of a problem with that. It's not just because it's a woman. You know, I think that was honestly one of the things that pissed me off, was that the media was just straight up calling all these people who were upset just like women haters, and they can't have women, and this is a boys club only, and it literally was not that. So what happens? You combine a game that was a setting that people were a little bit let down by. I'm not saying it's the reason it's gonna fail. You combine that with terrible marketing, you combine that with historical inaccuracies, you combine that with executives literally pointing out and challenging their fan base to not buy the game if they find it controversial. And then the final nail in the coffin, releasing between two other juggernaut games, Red Dead Redemption 2 and Black Ops 4, which again, depending on your opinions, it doesn't matter because whatever sells, sells. And Call of Duty always sells well. Who knows, maybe it's us mindless drones who are just buying the games. At the end of the day, you combine all of that together and you get one gigantic explosion of a bomb that just detonates in your hands. And it really sucks because I enjoy the Battlefield series. I think they made some bad decisions that's going to hurt them at the end of the day. And I really hope Battlefield 5 does well. I think that you can't just, I don't know. At the end, I don't even know what to believe. I don't know if they should be punished for the decisions they made that where they antagonized their own fan base, where they just did a crap job marketing. I feel like I don't want people to lose their jobs. I don't want people who are literally just working on what their bosses tell them to do to lose their jobs. But at the same time, you got to make a statement. And the fan base is making a statement. The pre-order sales are way down. And EA is probably looking at themselves like, well, are we going to strap on our boots and just kind of push forward? Or are we going to try to make changes? And it's hard. Like, what do you do when you've already made your stand? Like, you can't just backpedal. So we'll see. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Again, I know I'm not a hardcore Battlefield player, but I've noticed these are the arguments that people have. and stuff that I have seen even as a casual player, and I wanted to give you guys some perspective from someone who's outside looking in. Let me know what you guys think. Maybe there's other stuff that I missed. Drop it in the comment section below, but hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, drop a like on the video. It's super appreciated and incredibly helpful. And if you are new to the channel, if you want to see even more content like this, I'm gonna have a ton more Battlefield, Call of Duty, and Fortnite content coming, so make sure you guys are subscribed and have those notifications on so you guys don't miss content from me. If you want to support the channel directly, you guys can do so by checking out my sponsorships. You get access to early content, exclusive videos, and the special badge that shows up in all my live streams and in the comment sections of all my videos. So check that out only if you are willing and able to. And if you want to talk about anything, Twitter is the best place. I'm constantly on there talking. Go ahead and give me a follow over there. I'll have a link down below, along with links to my Gaming in a Second channel as well. You guys have an awesome day. I'm out. Take care. Peace.